Speak bold, ain't tripping on the haters. It could take freedom from a cold dead hands. We're locked and loaded for the last dance. 'Cause we're the new American gangsters, ready to die for this man.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this hot Monday night in Arizona.
Yeah, what is it, like 150,000 degrees outside?
Something like that, I'm
Yeah,
pretty
suck.
sure.
I got to get back up to the mountains. Now, I had the new puppy up in the volcano country for a couple of days this past week, and absolutely beautiful. And he hates going outside out here, but up there, just perfect.
He's smart.
Yeah,
Why
he
would
is
you
smart.
want to go out in this weather if you could avoid it?
And he hates wearing those damn little booties. Hey, do you mind if I talk about something real quick? Because it's kind of in line with the topic.
Yeah, let's do
But
it.
it's a lot of research that has been done for the last 5 years that really confirms everything we've been saying about USAID and the Central Intelligence Agency for a very long time, right?
Mhm.
There's this article that came out today. There's this researcher, Conrads. He serves as the head of communications for MEP Petra, Bystrom of one of Germany's political organizations. He spent the last 5 years tracing USAID and its involvement in Western Europe, right?
Right.
And so a lot of people think that the Western European countries, very much like the United States, are democracies that have elected willfully in free and fair elections, elected all of these internationalist cabal idiots, right? All of these international John McCain types. And it's amazing the depth of USAID's involvement in West European elections is scary as hell, because they've been doing this not just in the United States, trying to create what I call managed democracy, but they've been doing it all over Western Europe. And what they say, these groups allegedly launder influence through NGO cover operations, rig foreign elections, silence dissenting media, and export the very same deep state corruption President Donald Trump has vowed to dismantle.
Okay,
right? And
so this came from an article from a guy from Western Europe.
No, with this guy, and this was an article in Gateway Pundit.
Okay.
But it was about this West European who has spent the last 5 years of his life following this tangled web of USAID and all of these NGOs, all these
Well, he's saying
non-governmental
the exact
organizations.
same things,
100%.
almost verbatim, that we've been saying in the last, 10 episodes?
Right. And just to I just want to make clear to people that this is an international phenomenon, that this is the internationalist deep state cabal that has penetrated all the way down to the local level in the United States system of government and is directly operating through people like Stephen Richer in Maricopa County. And now,
Right.
I know Maricopa County, Stephen Richer no longer has power, elected power, right? But does he still have power? The question is, does he have power and influence over bureaucrats who still work in the recorder's office who are politically opposed to Justin Heap? That's
Right.
ultimately the question.
And that's
Right.
what we're going to talk about today, right? We're
Right.
going to talk about these
Mhm.
bureaucrats and the
Yeah.
potential power they
Mhm.
have to influence our government, even when we do have elected
Uh-huh.
leaders in place that we want to follow or we
Yeah,
trust.
it's absolutely amazing. And so I don't know. I just
That's
wanted to
fascinating.
throw that out there. Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah, and so, I guess that's where we talk today about those who lost the election making the rules that govern those who won the election.
Yep.
Isn't that what happened in Maricopa County?
Let me ask you a question about that, Brian.
Yeah.
How many employees, let's just throw an arbitrary number out there, how many employees to elected officials exist and operate in our government, would you say?
Jesus. Millions and millions.
Right.
Millions and millions of bureaucrats, right? Non-political appointed bureaucratic government employees. Now, what is the number? I did an episode of What the Fuck's Up on that. And it's a huge number when you look at, when you combine the federal bureaucracies with the state bureaucracies, with the county bureaucracies or borough, depending upon
Right.
what state you're in, or what are they called in Louisiana? Parish, right?
Parish, yeah.
Parishes, right? And so a lot of different types of what we would otherwise call a county or a political subdivision. But then you got all the city bureaucrats. You got the water department bureaucrats,
Yes.
right?
Department of Transportation, Motor Vehicle
It looks like you're
Department.
asking me to do dirty stuff, man. No, you're sitting back there going like this. And I'm like, what the Don't cut the show. You
Behave.
can't cut the show.
Behave.
I'm always behaving.
But the federal government or government as a whole
Right.
is the largest employer in the United States, right? More people work for government at some level than any other industry.
Right. The largest single employer. And if you say, if you were to combine all of the state employees and city employees together, that would become the largest government employer in the world. If you combine them into one employer, they're just different
Right.
political subdivisions, but they're still some level of government or another. And so we got to get the bureaucrats under control because the bureaucrats think they run the show.
Well, in 2019, leading up to the 2020 election, there was this big stir about the fact that Trump was going to potentially rig the election.
Uh-huh.
And this was legitimately what they were talking about, is Russia was going to interfere in the election. Ironically, what's interesting is when we pose election integrity questions, they say we're insane.
Right.
But leading up to 2020, they were planning for a Trump victory
Mm-hmm.
that they didn't believe would be legit. But whether it was or not, they wanted to make sure they had everything in place
Right.
to stop Trump, right? Producer Steve has a stat here for us.
So I just wanted to say people that work directly for the U.S. federal government is over 3 million. And it's actually only the 15th largest workforce in the United States. But
Oh, okay.
that's not including the subcontractors who are working directly for the federal
Right.
government or for state level.
It's not including the non-governmental organizations that do
No, and
exclusively
it's not
government
including state
functions.
level
Right.
employees that answer to the federal government as
Right.
well. I
Right.
mean, if you started to add all those
Uh-huh.
ancillary employees in, then it would definitely overtake all the other industries.
Right.
So when Trump got elected the first time in 2016, the bureaucrats kind of lost their mind.
Oh, totally.
And they
Yeah.
created an organization called Feds for Democracy.
Right.
Towards the end of that term in 2019,
Mm-hmm.
Millennial Millie, who runs a podcast, her team actually infiltrated
Mm-hmm.
the Feds for Democracy and started recording some
Right.
of the stuff that they were talking about.
Right.
I
And we
think
have
a-
a lot of that, right?
We do. We
Yeah.
have a lot of that, again, courtesy of Millennial Millie. And we did our additional research
Mhm.
above and beyond the Zoom that she released. But, Steve, if you could play for me video one. In this video, this is a clip from a Feds for Democracy Zoom. This is called What Can Be Done, and it's got a
To
brunette
the-
lady as the cover.
Crazy looking lady? Is that
Yeah,
what you-
yeah.
All right. We're ready for the crazy woman.
So we have the power.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of power, Laura, if you can switch to the next slide. I want to start with this quote by Gene Sharp, who's one of the pioneers in the field of nonviolent action, just to get a little bit at what power you all have as individuals and as federal workers. So Gene Sharp said in The Politics of Nonviolent Action, by themselves, rulers cannot collect taxes, enforce repressive laws and regulations, keep trains running on time, prepare national budgets, direct traffic, manage ports, print money, repair roads, keep markets supplied with food, make steel, build rockets, train the police and the army, issue postage stamps, or even milk a cow. People provide these services to the ruler through a variety of organizations and institutions. If people would stop providing these skills, the ruler could not rule. And just as an added insight on this, specifically focused on bureaucrats, President Harry S. Truman famously said, "I thought I was the president, but when it comes to these bureaucrats, I can't do a damn thing." So the bottom line with this is that we all, as ordinary people and as federal workers, have power.
That just goes to show that, these people are absolute lunatics. And they're communists because they believe, federal government employees are the ones out there responsible for milking cows.
Right.
Right. It's like once the government is the bureaucratic entity responsible for milking our cows, we're in deep shit. We're going to be like the Khmer Rouge, right? And we're going to be like Ho Chi Minh's China, and we're all just going to starve to death. And they won't need to vaccinate us because, we all won't have nothing to eat.
Well, and that's the reality, though. And what they're saying is actually correct. What Harry Truman said is correct. The bureaucrats run D.C.
Right.
The bureaucrats run this country at the very smallest local level,
Right.
all the way up, right?
Right.
From how much you pay for your motor vehicle
Right.
registration, that's determined by bureaucrats, right? The process by which we maintain our daily lives, it's all a bureaucratic agency. And
Yeah, it is.
this is the thing that they really push to these workers is they are teaching them
Right.
you control everything.
Right.
So if you don't like what's being told to you, you can change everything.
Right.
And this was more emphasized in video two. The federal workers have power, Steve. It has kind of a cathedral looking page on it.
Let's hold off on video 2 for a second, right?
Okay. Sure.
And let's sort of break this down a little bit, right? If you're a believer that the bureaucracy, if it doesn't like who's in power, then it should itself stymie that person in power.
Right.
Do you support any type of democratic system of government? Are the bureaucrats the leaders? Right?
Right.
And if you push that down to its furthest, right? Imagine, and I know people hate like the zoning commissions, and people hate what's the board you have to go to if you want to add a deck onto the outside of your house.
Right. Planning and zoning.
And then you've got to get building permits, and you got to get all this stuff, right? If you push it down all the way to the lowest level, just like we saw during the hurricanes in Florida, FEMA, avoid Trump homes.
Right.
Give no aid to Trump homes. Are we going to have local bureaucrats now making decisions antithetical to a citizen's building permit because they don't like their politics? That's exactly what these people are pushing.
Well,
100%.
but it's even worse than that, right? They're promoting that it doesn't matter who the people elect, right? Because these are the same people that talk about our voice, our vote, and, the will of the people.
Right.
Even if the vast majority of people support a candidate and that candidate gets elected, if they disagree, they know better.
Right.
and they want the government to operate in their will.
Mhm.
That to me sounds closer to
Right.
tyrannical dictatorship
Oh,
than anything that
100%.
they've been trying to say.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the point I'm trying to make,
Yeah.
is that is tyranny, that is dictatorship, that is an exercise of government authority contrary to the will of the people.
It's
And
like they
that's
justify it in
right.
their own mind somehow because they're not elected.
Right.
So I'm one of the people. So
Right.
if I make the decision for all the people, it's a good decision,
Right.
right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
they're essentially saying somehow I know better than millions
Right.
of Americans
It's all
who
the
voted.
ivory tower liberals like Stephen Richard that think they know everything about life and what's best for everyone. Right?
Right. Absolutely.
Was Stephen Richard ivory tower?
So the kind of people that we're dealing with here are the kind that that we encountered at the Capitol a couple of years back. They were rallying to get rid of the filibuster.
Mhm.
And the problem is that the Democrat Party really benefits from the filibuster.
Oh yeah.
And
Well-
and I went up to the leadership of this rally and I said, you know damn well that after you guys, if you were to succeed and get rid of the filibuster, you're going to be right back here in 2 years rallying to bring it back because you need it again.
Right.
These people embrace the pure democracy ideal, which is mob rule. It's tyranny of a group of people that are trying to enforce their will on everyone else. And
It's
that's how they
rules for
operate.
thee and not for me. That's
Right.
really what it is. It's
Yeah,
using
and
the rules when
this
it
is why
benefits
our
them.
founding fathers designed the country, the Constitution, to work for defending individual rights.
Right.
Because the individual person is the greatest minority.
Mm-hmm.
And the minority in this country is supposed to be protected from the majority.
Right.
Majority rule is one of the biggest fears of the founding fathers, and that's what mob rule is. That's what pure democracy is.
Right. Well, and that's I got to tell you, we've talked about it before, but that is one of the reasons, the very reason they hate the fact that the Supreme Court got rid of the Chevron doctrine, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so the Chevron doctrine gave deference to these bureaucratic elitist experts that were governing our lives at the federal level, right? You got to ask yourself, who's writing these 500,000 page, 2,000 page statutes? It's not our congressmen. Who's writing them, right? Who is governing them? Who's actually reading them? They actually read these large pieces of omnibus legislation that would take, it'd be kind of like reading, with the guy who wrote about the Gulag Archipelago. You guys ever read those? Yeah, Gulag Archipelago. No, I having a hard time remembering his name. I've read them. I mean, it takes a long time. It is slow reading, and they're very thick tomes, and it's very sad stuff. But talking about, filibuster and different rules in the Senate, right? Like this left winger in the Senate, in Congress, determined that, it requires 60 votes to kick illegal immigrants off of Medicare. And they couldn't get 60 votes.
Right.
Right. These are benefits, right, that Americans pay into this system. And what do they do to us every 2 years, every 5 years? What's the retirement age now?
It keeps going up.
Up
It's
and
what,
up
70,
and up.
I don't even know what it is now.
Right.
76, 78?
Is it? Yeah, geez.
It's way up there.
I'll be dead by then. Yeah, what is it? Solstin.
Let's see. Gulag Archipelago was written by Russian author Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Solstin.
My pronunciation of Russian names suck.
Right. But anyway, thank you. but the retirement age, right? We work and we work and we work and we get close and we get close and we close. And it's like they've had this carrot dangled in front of everybody's face for a very long time. And then they yank that carrot away and say, oh, yeah, you got to go another 10 years. And meanwhile, all the money we're pumping into the system, people like Nancy Pelosi were wasting while she was becoming filthy, bloody rich. Woman needs to go to prison, need to investigate every member of Congress that has gotten rich off of their office. But they keep taking this carrot back.
Yeah, absolutely they do.
Right? And while giving our money away.
Yep. And while simultaneously sabotaging the best interests of the people.
Well,
right? That's what they're doing.
And using our money to unduly influence our elections like they've been doing in Western Europe for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, can you play that next video for me, please?
Bureaucracy is a really powerful pillar. And, federal workers have unparalleled familiarity with the bureaucratic process. They know how to speed things up. They know how to slow them down. They have access to critical information about policies that are being considered and implemented. They can participate in internal decision making. They can provide or deny knowledge and expertise that those at the top of the bureaucratic totem pole need, essentially.
So yeah, bureaucracy. Let's talk about the power of bureaucracy.
Right.
According to Maria Stephen, who's the presenter in this Zoom, the bureaucracy has unparalleled power. And they talked to these bureaucrats, and there were hundreds of federal workers on the Zoom call, and they teach them and train them onto how to sabotage the agenda of the administration,
right?
How to disrupt. And they have a very comprehensive list that they provide as part of their training manual. Steve, can you put up that first image? It's got some columns and highlight. Yeah, a lot of yellow highlighting. So what can be done? This is what they talk about. So strategic tactics depending on your role. So they even go down the line and say, if you're a political appointee, here's what you can do. If you're into policy enforcement, here's what you can do. But some of these are quite interesting, and I highlighted them because I think they kind of stand out quite a bit. Number one, they tell everybody, determine your own line in the sand. So how much are you willing to do, right? And then they talk about publicly refusing orders, leaking information. If you look on the bottom right-hand corner, organizing and strategizing with non-federal organizations, unions, and religious groups. So these are your NGOs, right? Take leave to attend protests during work hours. Demand all administrative direction in writing. Share opinions on social media. And that's kind of innocuous, right? So they go through some of these things. They talk about striking. But there was a few things that really, really stood out. And it kind of led us to the document that they posted that we're going to talk about later. But Steve, can you put up video 5 for me, please?
And another act of commission, albeit highly, risky, and there are a number of great downsides, is leaking. So leaking information about pending or actual policies with journalists, with activists, influential people on the outside. But this, really should be used very judiciously, only on truly significant matters, because most disclosures outside of formal internal whistleblowing are at minimum a violation of contractual duty, and they may put leakers at significant legal risk. And of course, if information is classified, employees can be fired or criminally prosecuted, as Sarah may talk a little bit.
So what was interesting about the timing of this training and the whole leaking thing?
Wasn't that when the Roe v. Wade overturning decision was leaked?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and we researched some of the people in these videos.
Quite a
right?
few of them. One of them worked for the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right. So one of
Yeah.
these Feds for Democracy, one of
Right.
these workers that was receiving this training actually was
Right.
employed by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And I think they've narrowed it down to like 100 people
Uh-huh.
who would have had access to that
Right.
information.
Uh-huh.
But this is all part of their
Yeah.
agenda. Look at all the leaks that have
Hey,
occurred.
DOJ, if you want her name, give us a call.
Yeah.
Cash, if you want to give her a call, we know her name. So anyway, who is this woman? Do we know who she is?
Yes. Yes. Let's talk about her.
We got to talk about her because this is huge.
So her name is Maria Stevens.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been involved in a lot of NGOs and organizations that talk about nonviolent non-cooperation,
Right.
which kind of falls in line with her mentor, Gene. What was his name? Gene, somebody or another. Steve, can you put up the third element, which is Maria Stephen, for me? Okay, so who is Maria Stephen? Maria Stephen is co-leader and chief organizer with the Horizons Project. She worked at the United States Institute of Peace.
Sorry.
Where else did she work, Brian? Let's keep going.
She worked at the political arm of the Central Intelligence Agency, also known as the United States Department of State, where she led foreign affairs officer for the Bureau of Conflict and Stabilization Operations. She also worked at NATO headquarters.
Yeah.
Pick it up. Well, I don't want to pick it up. I want to talk down into this woman because she's beneath me. But anyway, I'm sorry. When did she? Do we know when she worked at? Go to footnote 3. Can we go to footnote 3?
I don't think it'll allow it to pull up, but she worked there in 2016.
21.
When she started working for the department around 2013.
Wow.
She changed positions. She was working there all through 2016, the entire Trump administration.
Right.
From 2016 to 2020, she was part of the State Department.
So she was hired on by, was it Hillary?
It would have. No, she would have been hired under under Hillary Clinton in the Obama administration.
Right.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so she's brought on as a leftist, as an activist.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, she's a political appointee that was hired into a bureaucratic job, right? We saw that happen when Biden was leaving. They were trying to get all of these political appointees into non-political appointee jobs, right? And into actual
Absolutely.
jobs so that they could continue their work undermining the Trump administration. And that's one role this woman played during Trump's first term.
If you watch the full Zoom that's out there that Millennial Millie put out, there is actually a point where they talk about how offended they feel by the terminology, the Obama holdovers. They found that very offensive, and they said that it was disrespectful to call the bureaucrats holdovers. But Brian, we had this conversation before. I don't think a lot of people realize that bureaucrats can't just be fired with a regime change, right? So if an administration changes, those bureaucrats' jobs are protected, right? So once they're in place for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, until they can be fired for cause, but over time, especially during the 20th century, right? The 20th century was the century when the federal government just, we became the enemy we were fighting, i.e., the Soviet Union, in terms both of our national security state, right? The CIA, they really became worse than the KGB. They were no longer there to protect your constitutional rights as an American citizen. They were there to, protect their power and to protect the power of the state over the citizen. something completely antithetical to our system of government, right? And so you have all of these legal rules that grow up, and you get all these Supreme Court opinions that come up through. We had FDR. He served for 4 terms, right? That's a lot of appointments to the U.S. Supreme Court. We have, LBJ and all the rules they were putting in place regarding protection for federal government workers. And the same thing happens at the state level as well, right? You got to have cause to fire these people. That doesn't mean you can't transfer people, that you
Right.
can't move people around to a like job, that has equivalent pay somewhere else, which is something Justin Heap should continue doing or consider doing if he actually has any authority over any employees in the recorder's office.
Well, and that's also the issue, right? Is who is supervising these people? Where does
Right.
that authority come from?
Right.
And it's not always the same. And it's interesting because they teach these people in this very lengthy Zoom, know your line, right? What's your line in the sand? So
Right.
one of the things I found very profound was the leaking, especially in light of us locating that employee that worked for the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right.
But in addition to that, if you're not willing to go that far, you're not willing to risk your career, risk your freedom to leak information, they teach you other kind of more innocuous ways. That
Right.
They say, well, you can still have an impact, you can still cause problems without having to go that far. And so another thing they talk about is slow rolling work. So Steve, can you play video 6 for me, please? So they talk about ways that you can delay productivity.
Right.
I don't know if everybody else here has experienced or heard the expression, that things don't run very quickly in government, right?
Right.
I think one of the expressions is government runs like molasses in wintertime,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How much
well,
of that is accidental and how much of that is intentional?
Yeah. Well, and I referred.
Mhm.
Another act of omission is going slow or slow down. So basically, people, bureaucrats, federal workers performing their duties at a foot dragging pace, which is less likely to attract attention than an overt strike, and has been used in a number of different cases.
What do you think of that, Brian?
I think that these are people that where do they get their paycheck from?
Well, the taxpayers.
Taxpayers,
Yeah.
right? The United States taxpayers. Now, I've been advocating for a very long time that Congress repeal the 16th Amendment. I think Congress should I think we need to amend the Constitution to repeal the 16th Amendment. I think we need to repeal the 17th Amendment. And I think we need to get rid of the Federal Reserve Act. But these are taxpayers.
Yep.
These people live on our dime. They work for us. But this is an example of this hack who was brought up in this USAID world, right? To believe that, they have the power to dictate to the people what's right and what's wrong, what should happen and what shouldn't happen. But that's why we have elections, right? And because they don't like the outcome of our elections, they think they have the right to change those outcomes. That is dictatorial. That should be criminal. Should be criminal 100%. This woman should never, ever get another federal government job in her life. And if I were a corporate employer and she was, and she was looking for a job with me, I'd say, hell no, stay the hell away. Especially if you're in Arizona, she can try to unionize you, right? And, and not that there's anything wrong with unions, but I don't know.
What's interesting about this is, again, these are all federal workers, mostly. Some of them were activists on there helping to facilitate. But in the chat, there were a lot of interesting things where they shared resources. And we talked about Maria Stephen and how she came from the Department of State, right?
Right.
Her connections to
Right.
intelligence,
Yeah.
the CIA, and
Right.
and these various departments.
Uh-huh.
This isn't a new playbook that they're using.
No, it's a very old playbook. This is, I've been, I did a tweet a long time ago that said, the Central Intelligence Agency overthrew the administration of Donald Trump via an election in 2020. And that's exactly what we're finding has taken place with the activities of USAID all over the Western democracies, the activities of USAID, and all of these affiliated NGOs and NGOs affiliated with the NSA, CISA, and all of these other national security institutions that have the power to censor our speech on behalf of our government, because private organizations can do what government can't. And so the CIA learned from its past mistakes, and that's why they went the NGO route.
Right.
Right. And so they call these color revolutions, where they have all of these organizations that come out and they try to overthrow regimes in that way, and that's been taking place all over Europe.
Well, what's interesting is in one of the chats, somebody made reference to a document. Steve, can you put up number 7, please? And this is a CIA document
Right.
that they're referring these federal workers to find out more information about how they can obstruct the agenda, the Trump administration agenda. No, 7 is an image. So this document is called Simple Sabotage. Well, that's not the right document, but we'll just roll with it.
Well, that's
Okay.
a simple sabotage field manual that we're talking about, right?
That's the CIA field manual.
Right. And
Yeah.
so the
No, but
the
that's okay.
CIA
Go back to the other ones.
the CIA wrote that field manual in an effort to, we were coming out of war, right? And
Yeah.
we were going into Cold War against the evil communist Soviet Union.
Mhm.
And so, this field manual was originally created, right, in this wartime context to sort of help the United States, win this war. But these are tools that the Central Intelligence Agency has turned on the United States. So I think it'd be cool to look at, some of what they're talking about. So can we get it pulled up?
Yeah, can you pull up the next document, Steve? The intro, Simple Sabotage intro. The one signed by the, I guess it would be the organizer. Yeah, it's a signed document. So it says, this Simple Sabotage Field Manual, Strategic Services, is published for the information and guidance of all concerned and will be used as a basic doctrine for strategic services training for this subject. It also goes on to say that it should not be allowed to come into unauthorized hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was later declassified, and this is a document that was referenced more than once
Right.
in the chat groups.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the language in here is what they're using in their strategy documents. So, Steve, can you pull up the next one, please? The next document. So this next document is kind of their intro. This is that paragraph 1D.
1D,
that we-
oh yeah. I
Yeah,
love
that we were
1D.
talking about. So I'll let you
Good
kind of
stuff.
go ahead, Brian.
Okay, so 1D, look at it. A second type of simple sabotage, requires no destructive tools whatsoever and produces physical damage, if any, by highly indirect means, right? And so you have these universal opportunities to make faulty decisions, right? To intentionally fuck up, to do, that's what they're telling people to do. That if you don't like the regime, then you just make mistakes, and that causes things to go awry.
Do you see that towards the bottom there? I think it's the fourth line up on the right. It says, a non-cooperative attitude.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This phrase, non-cooperative.
They're still using it today.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So the No Kings rally
Mm-hmm.
are actually holding training
Right.
in 2 weeks, and they're calling it non-cooperative resistance.
Right.
You can go ahead and take
No,
that.
no,
Oh,
no,
well,
hold
hold on.
on.
Leave it up. Sorry.
Yeah,
There
I
you
mean,
go,
because
Brian.
I'm just amazed at this, right? Making a faulty decision may be simply a matter of placing tools in one spot instead of another. Right? You can do a lot of stuff. Let's say, I mean, this was the mid 40s,
Right.
right? And so you had a lot of machine technology, a lot of blue collar workers, a lot of blue collar laborers. But what are we run with today, right? Computers.
Right.
I mean, faulty decisions today might be if you have to run data for a political party, you exclude certain things.
I think we've experienced that just a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. And then okay, a non-cooperative attitude. Right. This means just be a dickhead. But it may involve more than creating an unpleasant situation, right, among one's fellow workers. Create a hostile workforce. These people are telling you to
Right.
make your workforce unpleasant.
Yeah.
Right.
Engage in bickering.
Displays surliness and stupidity.
Just play dumb. Well, I
know.
guess all of our government,
Duh.
we've all experienced that, right? When you go
Right.
in to have something done
Right.
and you can't determine whether the person is incompetent or
Yeah.
intentionally playing
Well,
stupid.
I tell you what, in today's day and age, you have to have a 4-year degree, to get a government job. So that's easy for people to do, right? To, play stupid.
Right.
Because what's the value of a 4-year degree anymore? Yeah. If you guys hear growling and stuff like that, it's my werewolf. I've got a pet werewolf. And my pet werewolf does not like lefties who used to work for the Secretary of State. Wow.
Well, this document,
State Department, I mean. Yeah.
this document that they continue to reference
Right.
and take segments out of, it continues. It talks about how to sabotage transportation,
Right.
how to sabotage media,
Right.
all these different areas. But the one that they really took their playbook out of was how to sabotage as an employee. If you are an employee of the bureaucracy, how
Right.
can you become a saboteur? Steve, can you put up the next one, please?
Just get your hands really, really cold before you touch the cow's teats.
And then you can't milk the cow.
Can't milk the cow.
And
Right.
then Truman has to go without milk.
Truman has to go without milk.
So let's see. Number one, it says work slowly.
Right.
Think out ways to increase the number of movements necessary on your job. Use a light hammer instead of a heavy one or a small wrench to do what a big wrench needs to do.
Uh-huh. Use little force where considerable force is necessary, and so on. And so, keep in mind, folks, that this was drafted in a mechanical age, right? And today we're in a computer age, and so you can transfer all of these efforts to screw the system to computers very easily,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, but if you want, if you want to cause a government problem, right, and you got a bunch of bus drivers who claim their buses broke down and they just stop, and then people aren't moving to and fro, and who gets blamed, right? The people in power.
I love this one, Brian. It says where you would use a lathe or a punch, use a needle to do it. It takes more time.
Right.
Or when you go to the laboratory, just spend a long time in the bathroom,
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean, these are simple things that you can see employees doing that delay production, that
Right.
create problems in companies. We've all worked in some industry somewhere where we've had that employee
Right.
that takes 20 restroom breaks and stays gone for 10 minutes at a time. Okay, Steve, go ahead and put up the next one because it gets better. All right. So here's more instructions for employees. Go ahead, Brian. Let's see what we have there.
Even if you understand the language, pretend not to understand instruction in a foreign tongue.
Pretend that instructions are hard to understand and ask to have them repeated more than once. Or pretend that you are particularly anxious to do your work and pester the foreman with unnecessary questions.
Yeah. Do your work poorly and blame it on bad tools, machinery, equipment, or Bob. They left out Bob, but we got to blame Bob.
Oh, I love number 6. This will make any employer super happy.
No, it's not Bob. Let's blame it on Justin Heap.
Yeah.
Right?
And look at this one. This is how you secure your ineptness.
Right.
Never pass on your skill and experience to a new or less skillful worker.
Right. Stay on top by keeping everyone under you dumber than you are.
Yep.
Right. And that's really how dictatorships work.
Yeah.
Act stupid.
Oh, I love this. Report imaginary spies or danger to the Gestapo or police.
Right. Be as irritable and quarrelsome as possible without getting yourself into trouble. Well, fuck you, Shelby. Oh, sorry about that.
Give lengthy and incomprehensible explanations when questioned.
Right. Now, how many people out there, we got a lot of good bureaucrats that work in the system. They want to do their job, right? I'm sure we've seen a lot of this type of activity take place in the bureaucracies. And this is what they're preaching to federal, state, and local workers.
Right. All of these things.
Right.
There was one part where they're on there and one of the employees, one of the federal employees is saying, I like to intentionally misspell things in documents.
Right. And then they release the document and blame the administration.
Yes.
Right. And this was somebody who was working actively at the time in the Trump administration, the first Trump administration. They were intentionally releasing. So whenever you see documents that are released and they got spelling errors and the media immediately, comes out and uses it against Trump, think about it, folks. That, Trump cannot review every single document individually that is released by the federal government. He's just one man. He doesn't have that much time. Right. And so these people are pushing out documents with errors, intentionally intending to embarrass him.
Pull up that last one, Steve, because there was one thing on there that I really liked.
Cry and sob hysterically.
Yeah, cry and sob hysterically in front of government clerks.
Oh, my God.
That one was my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And do not cooperate in salvage schemes. So if there's a rally to fix what's wrong, don't cooperate.
Yeah. Misunderstand all sorts of regulations concerning such matters as rationing, transportation, traffic regulations, production of data to county parties. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry. I threw that last one in there.
Well, let's talk about that, Brian. Yeah. I think that's where we should really kind of end this show, is really talking about how this translates into modern day and specifically into what we're experiencing with the county recorder's office. We've seen a lot of problems. It's a complete shit show. Right. We have public records that we've been battling for months and months. And when we contact the Board of Supervisors office, they say, well, we did our part on our end. You need to talk to the recorder. And then when you contact the recorder's office, they say, well, we sent that to the Board of Supervisors office. So it's just this constant finger pointing back and forth, nobody taking responsibility. Right. Things are getting slow rolled. They're taking forever. There's limited communication. They're sending out emails telling us that your public record has been satisfied, but no documents
Right.
attached,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It's just a complete mess. And then you were talking about data. What about third parties? I
Right.
mean, look at what just happened with these 83,000 letters that got sent.
Agreed 100%.
Do you think Justin Heap reviewed that file, or do you think that he hired somebody? Somebody was responsible for working with this third party.
Right. Well, and who do you think that third party was? They're not releasing the name.
Right.
And we got our people on it today, and they've done a PRR to get information related to who the third party is. Who do you think it is?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm going to take a guess. It's maybe Runback.
Could be Runback.
Could be.
We don't know.
They
for
are a
sure.
printing company.
We don't know for sure.
Yeah.
They are a printing company. They work routinely with Maricopa County and the transmission back and forth of voter registration data, right, to send large mailings and things of that nature. Might not be Runback, right? But why is nobody talking about who this third-party vendor is? And it's probably got a lot to do with, we've been talking a lot about what's been happening with all these third-party corporations, NGOs, and their involvement in our elections and how they're making things go awry. But it's interesting that oh, you're gonna bring the monster on. This is the monster. This is my werewolf.
This is who's causing all the havoc.
This is Lincoln. Yeah, this is Lincoln. Lincoln is my boy, and yeah. Oh, he's a handful, man. He's a handful. Yeah, and oh my God, he loves camping. He loves being out in the wild. Got him little headlamps, Nebo headlamps.
Oh my goodness, how cute!
Yeah, and so when I got my dogs out in the wild, and we're out at night, late at night, walking around and hiking around and packing around and stuff. And so I always know where my dogs are.
Right.
But he doesn't even need a leash. He hangs out with me. He goes with me. He's not running away or anything like that. And the second advantage to getting your dog a headlamp is they attract bugs. So when you're just sitting there in the same spot doing photography or just hanging out at your truck, they got hours of entertainment playing with the bugs. Right?
Is that what we need in here? We need to bring some bugs in here.
we need to bring some bugs in. But really quickly, let's talk about. There's a lawsuit that was brought by America First Legal, right? On behalf of Justin Heap, who was suing the Board of Supervisors because, and this has got to be the pettiest thing I have ever seen in my life. Stephen Richer and the Board of Supervisors, on their way out the we got our ass unelected door, they changed the agreement, right? The shared services agreement. And I think they did it specifically to cause the havoc that's happening now. What do you think?
Well, look, we've seen things decline considerably, and I really have a hard time believing that decline is just the fault of one person, right? Every department doesn't just start devolving that quickly.
Right.
And like we were talking about, it's the finger pointing, right? Blame someone else, which is part of the tactic. If nobody has defined responsibility, then everybody's responsible, yet nobody's responsible, right? It's that accountability factor. You just take that and throw it out the window.
Right. And don't forget to play stupid.
Yeah. And that's like if you can't, if you got three people that, are involved in a crime and you can't get one of them to confess and finger another guy, and you have to try them separately, they can all on the stand say, I didn't do it. It was Bob. Bob can say, I didn't do it. It was Charles. Charles, and so it creates problems, right? And I think that's the problem they wanted to. But I want to sort of explain this a little bit. And I want to go to the board real quick. Can I do that?
I think what you were explaining with the names is basically these are government employees using like criminal tactics to just muddy everything up, to gum up the gears of operations.
Well, it's not really, criminal tactics if they're legal, right? But they created a joint services agreement that
I didn't mean that the tactics were
hides them.
criminal in
Right.
nature. What I meant is that these are things that criminals like to do.
yeah.
The same kind of philosophy, basically.
so-
Yeah.
So
Well,
does this thing still work?
hello. So while we're waiting on Brian to go to the board, there we go. So there's the board.
All right, here's the board. All right, so the recorder, right? He had his own technology department and personnel, correct?
Right. The recorder had technology and personnel.
Right. So Stephen Richer had access to all of this stuff.
Yes. Stephen Richer had a technology department.
Stephen Richer, on his way out the door, with the board of supervisors on its way out the door, said, "Oh no, we're going to take over that, and we're going to move it under us." Is that correct?
Pretty much, yes.
And now, if Justin Heap wants to use this technology and any personnel, what does he have to do?
He has to utilize personnel hired by and overseen by the Board of Supervisors or go through the Board of Supervisors.
So he has to go through the board of supervisors and then back down to these people who are controlled by the board of supervisors. Is that correct?
That's correct.
They neutered the county recorder and they put Arizona elections in jeopardy. They did this on purpose because now they're all attacking Justin Heap. Why? They want to make Justin Heap look bad so that they can look good.
Right.
That's what this is.
Well, it sounds like it's a simple sabotage. 1944, CIA.
All right. Well, we know Stephen Richer is CISA,
Right.
right? He placed CISA at a higher level than his recorder functions, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was out censoring speech, trying to get people fired, trying to destroy reputations of candidates he didn't like through lawfare and all of this other stuff, right? And then we have States United. We know he's working with States United in the Maricopa County Recorder's Office. Do we know if they're tied to the Board of Supervisors yet?
We don't know because we have not got the disclosure of emails yet.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's what we got to follow a lawsuit, I'm
well,
sure.
one hand says, "Oh, we fulfilled that request." The other hand says, "Oh, we don't know anything about it."
Well, it's interesting because there is one public record in particular where they tried to send us a bill. And they said, well, we're not going to send you these documents until you pay like $1,000, right? Well, in the state of Arizona, they cannot charge you for searching documents.
Right.
But they specifically put on the invoice that the money was for searching documents.
Uh-huh.
So the county attorney agreed with our decision on that and said, okay, we got to vacate that invoice and then you need to start producing records. That was 2 months ago. And we still do not have records in regards to that public records request. But you said something, Brian, very interesting about the narrative. Stephen Richer and controlling the narrative.
Right.
And that seems to me to be another reason
100%.
why they would take that technology department, right? Because they use that technology to control the narrative and they can't risk that narrative shifting under a recorder heap. Right?
Yeah, and, and we've done a number of shows that sort of, refute their narrative with actual documents, with records, with facts, right?
Absolutely.
With information. And so, they want to keep that narrative up because it benefits them to keep that narrative up. Who's that idiot representative from Arizona who was just all over attacking Kerry Lake the other day, who said, Maricopa County's got the best elections in the world?
I don't know which one it was.
I think he's from Greg.
Oh, that's right. It was Greg Stanton.
Greg Stanton.
Because, Kerry went after him in a congressional hearing. So,
yeah.
She called him out for it.
Hey, Greg, Maricopa County elections suck.
Yeah.
And they might get even worse because they're denying the elected Maricopa County recorder the ability to do his job by taking the tools he needs to do his job. And this is an act. This is an act of sabotage right out of the CIA
But
playbook.
and they're not just sabotaging the elected official. And that's what I think people need to understand too. When they
Right.
commit these acts of sabotage, they're sabotaging the American people. They're sabotaging our elections. Like they couldn't get any worse than Maricopa County.
Right.
They could get worse. And they still get to control the narrative through the
Right.
whole process, no matter what that looks like. Steve, can you put up the website 14? So it was interesting because under Stephen Richer, the website looked different and it was a little bit revamped recently.
Ah,
Uh,
it's got all the election truth on it, doesn't it?
oh, absolutely. Now, this stuff was there
Oh.
under Richer, but I want you to look
Correct
up
me.
at the top left hand
Yeah.
corner.
Just the facts.
It says Maricopa County elections. The Maricopa County Elections Department, people, you need to know this because I have emails, I can prove it, is Scott Jared and the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. They have claimed Maricopa County Elections Department for themselves. So when you see the terminology Maricopa County Elections Department, that is not Justin Heap in the county recorder's office.
Nope.
Steve, scroll down for me, please. So they have their election myths. You see that, right? Election myths. Go ahead and just scroll quickly till you get to the yellow bar. There's a yellow bar that's going to come up somewhere towards the bottom here. Oh, there we go. Look at this. Do you think that Justin Heap would leave this on the website?
Yeah, probably not.
The November 2020 general election was administered with integrity, and the results were accurate and reliable. This has been proven through statutorily required accuracy tests, court cases, and counts performed by the political parties and post-election audits. Even if he believed that to be true, do you think that a recorder 6 years later is going to attest to the integrity and the details of an election that occurred many years ago?
No.
No. That doesn't make sense to me, especially when you consider these, this is their integrity, right? So why are they going to vouch for someone else? Go ahead and scroll down again, Steve, more. And here's all of those narratives where they're painting all these false talking points to counter all of the evidence that has come up, right? We didn't perform secret testing. That's false. Even though they had to admit to it, even though we released video proving that they did hold other testing, right?
Are we talking about 2022 or 2020?
Oh, this is 2022. So
Yeah.
all of this down here is 2022.
Right, and that came up in the appellate briefing, right?
Yes, it
The
did.
secret testing, the changing of the software after the official statutorily required testing. And so we have disproven most of these myths that these people insist on pushing as false, right?
Right.
And so we know that they changed the software in the tabulators in 2022, and then they ran secret testing. They didn't invite anybody to that testing, right? The way elections work, folks, basically you have political parties, right, that are allowed to participate, oversee this testing that is done by the elections department. You have county parties that participate and oversee the actual election, right? And so what happens when the political parties and their representatives are no longer invited to these secret tests? Does anybody know if the tabulators are functioning properly?
No, I
No.
mean, that's
Right.
that's the whole point. Is they ran their LNA testing, they had everybody sign off, and then they came back and did it again. Steve, do you see the one where it says early voting? 74,000 more mail-in ballots were counted in the November election than were sent. What is that? No, I'm just looking at some of these things where they're going out and talking about what was sent, what was received. But the long story short of it, you can take that down. is they have to keep that control of the narrative, right? They have to neuter Justin Heap
Right.
from being able to be effective,
Right.
and they utilize these same tactics, these slow roll, play stupid, make mistakes,
Right.
control the narrative.
Yeah, just an error. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. When we gave you that data, we didn't mean to fail to include this stuff.
Right.
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 Yeah.
Right.
Who's Bob?
Um,
I don't know. Who's Bob?
You know,
Blame
it's-
it on an employee that doesn't exist, or
Right.
when you're trying to call out an employee that does exist, pretend like she doesn't exist.
Oh, like they did in the 2022 Carrie Lake trial
Right.
when they tried to claim that an employee could not possibly have done what we claimed she did because she wasn't real. So we were able to prove she worked for Maricopa County. So,
Go
I mean, this
figure.
is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to continue to deal with
Right.
is this bureaucratic
Right.
control. Where do you see it all heading from here, Brian?
You know, I don't know. I really don't know where it goes from here. But, it's like, if you compare my hand to my wife's hand, right? Mine's all chewed up, scratched, gnawed on. Of course, from the puppy. My wife's hand is nice, smooth, clean, soft skin. Right. Her job is to teach it peace, and mine is to teach it war. So I don't know where we go
Right.
from here.
Right.
I don't know where we go, but we have all of these bureaucrats who have been ingrained through the 20th century that they're the boss, right? But what happens if every private in the United States Army gets to be the general? Do we even have an army?
No, of course
No.
not. Right.
Right. And so, part of the problem is when all of these people, and this is the act of sabotage from the little pamphlet we were talking about. When every bureaucrat goes out and acts like they're the president and doing their own thing, then all of government breaks down and is fucked up. And that is the act of sabotage they're aiming for, right? To break the administration, to make government so ineffective and inefficient that the people say, oh, enough is enough. We will accept your leader, right?
Right.
Whatever the case may be. And that's
Right.
part of the goal.
Well, and I think there's been proven cases of these tactics being employed on Trump's first administration and probably during this current one.
Oh, it's
And then
absolutely still
they
occurring.
turn around and take a conglomeration of these efforts to ruin things, collect the sound bites and talking points, and then put that out in the public as failures of the Trump administration.
Right.
Even
Right.
though it's saboteurs
Mhm.
that are on the bureaucrat level
Right.
trying to make things worse.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, especially what we're dealing with when we talk about Maricopa County, right?
Mhm.
Because you've got Justin Heap, and even for those people that don't fully understand, they know that he's responsible for certain things,
Right.
but they don't know what he's not responsible for. So
Right.
everything that occurs in Maricopa County Elections Department is on him, even if it's not on him,
Right.
right? People want to go against the recorder for tabulator situations, which the recorders, even under Stephen Richer, had no oversight of, right?
Yeah, that's true. Although, on election day, it was Stephen Richer standing there
Yep.
with Bill Gates, acting like, the two of them were the co-elected runners of all
Yep.
elections. And Stephen Richer was actually talking about, the tabulator issues and the tabulator problems.
Right.
And so he was coming out on that issue, even though it wasn't in
Right.
his wheelhouse.
But he
right?
came out as their spokesman.
Right.
He talked about the issues with the tabulators. His staff accessed those tabulators, so it was a different world under Richer.
Mhm.
But my point is everything is the leader's fault,
Right.
right? And so if they can make the public believe
Right.
that all of these various aspects are Justin Heap, but they not give him the ability to control the environment, the
Right.
employees, and the situation,
Right.
then they can make him look bad really quickly, and
Oh,
they
no
can
doubt.
they can totally sabotage our elections
Yeah.
and then point the finger. It wasn't me. It was Justin. It was
Right.
you. You
Well,
did it.
and imagine this, right? Justin Heap is statutorily responsible for mail-in ballots,
Mhm.
right? That's his job. That's his role. All other aspects of Maricopa County elections belong to the Board of Supervisors, and people should understand that. Now, here's the problem for Justin Heap. If Justin Heap cannot hire his own technical staff to help get the employees in needed to signature verify what'll be 2 million ballot affidavit envelopes, then that's intentionally interfering with our elections to make Justin Heap look
Right.
bad.
Or even improve the system,
Right.
right? Any desire to improve the system has to go through this bureaucracy.
Right.
I mean, he's not going to go in there and reprogram things or
Right.
change softwares. That's all going to be
Yeah.
required by a bureaucrat
Right.
or a
And
third party.
well, and it's not only that, but if he has to go through the Board of Supervisors to get access to technical staff to make those changes, then that's 2 layers
Right.
that he has to go through that can hinder his performance and really slow his ability, to perform effectively. And I believe this was intentionally done. The sort of new agreement is the let's make Stephen Richer look good agreement.
Well,
is
and
really
and
what
I
it
just
is.
want to point out before we wrap up, they did the same thing to David Lara
Yeah.
in Yuma County. So David Lara won. He ran on the same platform of election integrity, wanting to fix the elections.
Mhm.
And the Board of Supervisors in Yuma County did the same thing. They withdrew the old SSA and had the new recorder sign a new contract
Right.
so that he wouldn't have access to a
Mhm.
technical team,
Right.
to certain documents. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, this is obviously orchestrated.
Right.
It's a plan.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to convince me otherwise. I mean,
100%.
the timing of it was completely.
It's a conspiracy to, control America First, MAGA type politicians and candidates.
and really control our election,
Right.
because that's what this is all about. You
100%.
cannot allow the citizens to regain control of their elections if
Right.
you want to fix an election,
Right.
right? And that's really what it comes down to. It's not about David Lara.
Right.
It's not about Justin Heap or any other
Right.
elected official. What it comes down to is it's about thwarting the will of the people
Right.
and total control
Mhm.
and sabotage of our election.
Yep. 100%.
Well, you got any wrap up there, Brian?
Well, I
Lincoln has wrap
Lincoln
up.
does.
He has something
Yeah.
to say.
I just want to, God, I cannot reiterate to people enough that we are in 2026. Okay. 2026 elections are going to be the most important elections of your lifetime. They are more important than the 2024 elections. With what we have learned since Donald Trump took the White House, folks, you should be appalled. You should be 100% appalled at your members of Congress, at your local government officials who continue to obstruct your ability to select the candidates you want, right? And for Arizona's 2 senators and that schmuck, what's his name? We talked about him earlier.
Greg Stanton.
Greg Stanton. For them to come out and support your money going to illegal aliens in the form of Medicaid, when you as American citizens have to jump through billions of hoops to get any Medicaid, when you as an American citizen who's on Medicaid could be entitled to more Medicaid
Right.
if they weren't sending all of your money to illegal immigrants.
Get involved.
Get involved. Get
Go to meetings.
active.
Do
And
research.
do research and make sure that, unfortunately in Arizona, your senators are not up for election in 2026. Stay tuned for 2028 though, because Mark Kelly, he needs his shave head needs to go, and same thing in Alaska with Murkowski. She needs to go.
Yeah.
And so,
But Congress is up
Yeah.
on the ballot, and we need to maintain
Congress,
Congress,
100%.
right? We need to swap out some of these guys.
Yeah.
There's a special election going on right now in Congressional District 7.
Right.
So I mean, we still need to make sure that we hold those congressional seats and get rid of these communists, like you're saying,
Yeah.
the Secretary of State, the governor,
Right.
the attorney generals.
Yeah.
Those are the worst.
100%. And your county attorneys, if you guys in wherever you will happen to be in the United States of America, if you have a county attorney, whatever they're called, district attorney, you need to take a hard look at them. If these people are not MAGA, if they're the rhino type or the leftist type, then they are working against you, the American people. And so you need to stay awake. You need to stay involved. You need to get out and vote, and you need to make all your friends vote.
And educate your neighbors and your friends.
And like I keep saying, Democrats. Right? If one group of people can steal an election by using mail-in ballots, so can other groups of people. So you might want to ponder that one and put that in your peace pipe. Right?
Elections are not a partisan issue. They are
Right.
bipartisan.
Right.
Doesn't matter. So,
That's all I got. Steve, closing words?
all right.
Come
Well,
on,
good
Steve.
night. Thanks for joining
Steve,
us.
you're never,
Nothing?
you're never this quiet, Steve.
Okay, there you go. Steve's going to close us out.
It never ceases to amaze me how the structures that be the Democrats, the establishments on either side,
Uh-huh.
they always act like we're all kooky, radical conspiracy theorists
Uh-huh.
for pointing at flashing neon signs that are saying, look here,
Right.
when consistently we're actually the ones late to the game for
Uh-huh.
something that they pointed out years before.
Right.
Like the movie Kill Chain that the Democrats sponsored about Trump winning, and they were blaming it on rigged Dominion systems and electronic voting systems
Right.
that
And
were
how many of them?
inaccurate and being hacked
How
and
many
all
of
these
those-
other things. And it's like, here we are years later, and
Uh-huh.
we're finally looking at it. Well, I mean, me and Shelby started looking at it right away, but we come around to being on the same page as them, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, never mind.
Right.
That wasn't a thing.
I got a question for you.
The elections are perfect.
How many of them Democrats were sued by Dominion?
I can answer that. I can answer that. You ready? Ready?
None.
None.
Right.
None.
Nunca.
Yeah, we've got them out there
Zero.
bankrupting
Yeah.
some of our elected officials,
Right.
bankrupting Mike Lindell, right? They
Right.
went after Fox News, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they get a significant amount of money
Uh-huh.
for simply questioning? That's
Right.
the other part. So now you got the rant going again. So that's the other part of this
Well,
madness.
that's why we're
that
here.
we're dealing with just a maddening society
Right.
because we have the right constitutionally to challenge and question our elected officials.
Right.
And we can say whatever we want because
Right.
they have the right to lie.
Right.
I mean, it's all been ruled on by the Supreme Court, right?
Right.
I, as a politician, can tell you whatever you want to hear to get elected, and I don't have to keep my promises.
Right.
But then you can talk all the crap you want about me, and that's
Uh-huh.
all okay, right? That's how the checks and balance.
And that's the trade-off.
Right.
That's the
but
First
you've
Amendment.
got these third-party contractors like Dominion and
Right.
Runback and ES&S,
Right.
and we can't criticize them even though they're doing the function of our government
Right.
because they're third-party contractors. This stuff has to change.
And we can't
It
get
has
records.
to change.
And that's the problem I have with the Arizona legislature. Why in the hell hasn't the legislature in the state of Arizona amended the Public Records Act to require, when third-party vendors like Runback, all they do is government work.
Right.
All they do is government work. Right.
Right.
It's not like a road construction company
Or a plumber.
or a plumber.
Right.
Right. They do government work, and they do the most important work in our government. They do election. That's all they do. but yet we can't have access to their records. And again, I'm
And-
going to call on the Department of Justice. Department of Justice, you need to seize Runbeck's loading dock video from the 2020 elections, if it still exists,
I doubt they still exist.
because it'll show one of two things. That A, nobody actually delivered 18,000 ballots to Runbeck on the day after the election, as their documents show, or somebody did, right?
And we'll at least know who.
Yeah. And if they didn't, well, that raises some pretty serious questions.
Not only that, but you actually just brought up another major example of hypocrisy,
Yeah.
right? Runbeck is not held to account when a major contractor for the audit was, and all
Right.
of his personal emails and personal information was
Yeah, 100%.
dragged out into the public.
Right.
But we can't hold Runbeck accountable.
Uh-huh.
We can't ask for public records from them.
Right.
This is
Insane.
this is hypocrisy at its
Yeah,
finest.
I agree 100%. Mhm.
Yeah, it's a 2-tier, maybe even a 3-tier justice system,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
We're going to have some interesting stuff to talk about next week. So.
Oh, yeah. Next week's show is going to be pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think we might have a guest. I still have to talk to her, and
Yeah.
we'll have some fun with it. We'll see what happens.
All right. Thanks for
Hey,
joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful night.
Happy 4th of July.
Peace.
Happy
4th of
Independence
July.
Day.
Yeah, don't blow yourselves up. All right. And if you do it with friends.